So thanks, Rob, for joining us today. I thought it'd be great to get your thoughts on what is competitor price tracking, what are some of the benefits of using competitor data to influence your pricing strategy, and maybe explore some of the pitfalls around being over-reliant on competitor data.
Sure. So for me as a data scientist, competitor price tracking is really any pricing strategy where you use competitor data to inform your price decisions. So this could be as simple as scraping the internet for publicly available prices and setting your price to those prices, or using those prices to predict where your competitors are going.
Okay. And are there certain sectors that this applies to more than others? So should certain sectors ignore competitor data and other sectors it's probably going to be more prevalent for?
Yeah, for sure. We tend to see it dominate any sector where prices are kind of readily available, usually on the internet. And also where the entry to market is very easy. So cheap electronics, for example, where there are a lot of middlemen shipping electronics made in Chinese factories and then brought to the West. And really the only competition vector they have is price. Another example is air travel. And you kind of see people exploiting those inefficiencies in sites like Skyscanner because the internal airlines pricing algorithms get confused because they're all matching off each other, and you can end up with these little eddies that people can then take advantage of.
What are the benefits, do you see, of why people should be even bother collecting competitor data?
Well, fundamentally, I think it's great for the consumer. The price discovery mechanism is kind of going on behind the scenes. So by the time the product gets to the market, the consumer knows that they're actually paying what the companies deem to be a fair price for their product. The benefit for the company is you need to know your marketplace. You need to have an understanding of the business that you're going into. If your costs are massively greater than actually what you can sell it for in the marketplace, you shouldn't be selling that product.
And what are some of the pitfalls of why people should avoid competitor data or be a bit hesitant, a bit watchful of using competitor data?
I think the fundamental problem is that just because your competitors are setting a price doesn't mean that that is the correct price for a product. It's very easy to get trapped in kind of where industry values a product rather than where the value that people are willing to pay for it. The other problem we see is that getting competitor data is really difficult. So you only tend to match about 10% of your inventory. So if you're using a competitor-only strategy, you're only managing that portion. And that may not be the high revenue or high profit portion of your inventory. So it's very clear that kind of competitor pricing, what's useful and informative for the business, should not really be the dominant strategy for your whole inventory.
And so people are using competitor data to influence their pricing strategy. Are there any additional data sets or additional insights that they should look to influence their pricing strategy?
So fundamentally, there's kind of two sides to how you should price your inventory. The first one is simply you need to know your inventory. You need to know what pricing strategies you can apply to what products. There will always be a certain sector of your inventory that you will have to match the competitor price because that is the only thing that you compete on. If it's easy to make or you don't have brand power, then you will probably have to match competitors and slightly undercut them just to sell the inventory. What you then need to do is understand the rest of your inventory because if you don't have competitor data, how do you set that price? And even if you do, it may not be the correct thing to do. So you can leverage other forms of data like volume or profit or revenue. For example, if you're selling a lot of something at a given price, you can happily increase the price to see what happens because you may be leaving a lot of money on the table.
Thanks for your time. I think we've got some great insights today in terms of competitor price tracking and where you should look to use it and where you should maybe look to supplement it with additional data sets. From my perspective, I think I've learned that it's most applicable to online retailers or travel companies whereby pricing is publicly available. And whilst it's a fantastic method of almost benchmarking yourself in the marketplace, you should look to potentially supplement it with additional data sets such as your sales history, your website performance, because that's where the real optimization opportunities come in. And also generally that actually you're only matching maybe 20-30% of your portfolio. Therefore, if you're over-reliant on competitor data, that's almost 70% of your product inventory that you're not optimizing. So some great insights there. Thank you, Rob.